At number 10, we have Singapore. Singapore is small, but the government has a firm implementation of the laws and policies. Any wrong move can cause a person to be fined. Like spitting in a public area, for instance, you can be fined for that. Also, if you smoke in public areas, you are most likely to get into some trouble with the law. Even wearing an inappropriate dress in public can also land a person in jail. However, Singapore's strict adherence to the rules has resulted in a world-class economy with living standards that are way higher than many other nations. In at the number 9 spot, we have Japan. People believe that for many years, the feudal system that was in place in Japan still has its influence on the structure and workings of the modern government. The hierarchy of authority can be found in almost any structure in the country, including in the home, of course, in the school system, office and workplaces, you name it, it's all there. So pretty much everybody respects the person who is superior to them. All of the companies in the country adhere to the strict law that all employees from the CEO down to the janitor are supposed to excel in their work. Number 8 leads us to China. In the midst of territorial disputes with its neighbors, China has projected a very positive image by being open to other nations. However, one must keep in mind that China is still a communist country. Any person or agency who gives rise to anti-government propaganda, well, they're silenced pretty much immediately. The youth of the country are also deterred from being fascinated and influenced by Western culture and Western thought. And the media also is under control. Access to the internet has several restrictions, and websites like Google and social media platforms like Facebook are censored and blocked. Nobody is allowed to talk about rebellion or change or reform or anything like that in China. From there, let's move on to number 7, Cuba. The birthplace of Cuban cigars and the late Fidel Castro, it's primarily seen as a world-class vacation destination. But behind its beaches and Latin music and all of that, Cuba remains a communist country, and those who speak against the government, well, they face serious consequences. The internet is regularly screened, and writers who post anti-government sentiments will almost certainly face jail time if they're arrested. Cubans know how to party, of course. It's a great spot for vacationing. However, playing certain types of music, reggaeton music, well, it can be prohibited. From there, let's look at Equatorial Guinea at number 6. In the country, people are discouraged from learning how to read and write, according to many reports. Now, the rate of tourism, though, in the country is also very low due to certain factors. President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Basogo, he's a man that runs the country and has been in power since 1979. TV and radio stations are under the control of the government as well. Also, foreigners who are allowed to enter Equatorial Guinea are closely monitored and prohibited from filming scenes and conditions that portray any type of poverty. Number 5 leads us to Saudi Arabia. This country, of course, is deeply rooted in its laws, and these laws are based on the religion and traditions of the country. Social laws can be very strict, especially for visitors who are not necessarily familiar with the rules of the land and the culture there. For example, you should refrain from holding hands and any sort of public displays of affection. Also, alcohol is banned, and during Ramadan, the month of fasting, you should not have any water or food visible in public during this time, or even visible in your car, or you could risk being fined. Media, including books, newspapers, magazines, television and films, as well as online content, are also censored by Saudi Arabian government officials. The Saudi government closely monitors media and restricts it under official state law. Next, let's look at Eritrea. This country is located above the Horn of Africa and has been ruled by President Isaias Afwerki, who came into power in the year 1993. Now, the government has full control of the media and over the news, as well as control of who writes the news. No news can be broadcasted without approval from the president first, and the religion in the country is also controlled. Since 2004, Eritrea has been designated as a CPC, and what that means is that it's a country of particular concern under the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998, Section 402B, for having engaged in or tolerated particular severe violations of religious freedom. Coming in at number 3, we have Syria. Syria's violence has risen over the years as clashes between government and rebel forces have intensified. The Syrian regime has resorted to a nationwide communications blackout to curb anti-government protests, and communications via mobile phones as well as landline phones as well as internet access are restricted, and foreign news correspondents are also restricted, and media is very closely monitored. Syrian journalists who oppose the government can actually be targeted. From there, we look at Iran at number 2. The government of the country is based on religion and Sharia laws. Actions and propaganda against the government are illegal in Iran. Logging into social media websites such as Facebook and various different Google platforms, YouTube and whatnot, it's something that you should do with caution. VPNs aren't allowed in Iran. However, it's known that everybody uses them to use Facebook and YouTube and other websites that are blocked in Iran. Even the government is said to know this, but hey, you still gotta be pretty cautious when you're using those platforms. Women are supposed to wear hijabs and cover in public, and Western music is prohibited to be played or performed in public. The country coming in at the number 1 spot is North Korea. The communist country of North Korea accepts tourists from all over the world except tourists from South Korea as well as the United States. I never knew this. Also, personal guides that are called minders, they are assigned to every tourist that enters the country. They accompany tourists from the day that they enter to the day that they leave. Literally, they make sure that tourists do not break any rules and regulations of the country. They literally accompany you every single where you go. The administration has complete control over everything, including TV, radio, as well as publication companies. News and television content is censored, and only the ruling elite have access to the internet, and their online activities are tightly monitored. Traveling is also limited in the country, and intimate relations between unmarried couples are not allowed in North Korea. Women in the country are not allowed to wear pants, and the communist regime of North Korea, well, it has reportedly outlawed all but 15 non-socialist haircuts, and they have instead issued an order for proper hairstyles. So only certain hairstyles can be had in that country.
Starting off at number 10, we have São Tomé and Príncipe with about 8,000 visitors. The African island nation of São Tomé and Príncipe remains one of the least visited countries in the world. The island's sugar-based economy gave way to coffee and cocoa in the 19th century. Together, the islands comprise the second smallest African country after Seychelles, and at 225 kilometers off the northwestern coast of Gabon, they are seldom visited because of their relative remoteness. Up at number 9, we have a country called Niue with just under 8,000 visitors. The tiny, very rocky island nation is situated in the middle of the South Pacific. At only 260 square kilometers large and with around 1,000 inhabitants, Niue is also one of the smallest countries in the world. Surrounded by protective reefs and presided over by a sunny tropical island, Niue has one very unique trait: high levels of natural radioactivity in the soil. But don't worry, no negative effects have been reported. Making it in 8th place, we have Libya with about 6,250 visitors. Though the 17th largest nation in the world, Libya has more than its fair share of problems. Civil war has plagued the nation, and clashes are frequent throughout the country, with attacks affecting even hotels hosting tourists. 90% of the land is also covered by extremely dry desert with harsh climates. In fact, it's only in the northern regions of the country on the Mediterranean Sea that they enjoy a milder climate. But those tourists that dare to brave the environmental and political conditions will be rewarded with amazing historical heritage and views. In 7th place, we have Marshall Islands with about 6,000 visitors. The Marshall Islands comprises 29 coral atolls with over 1,000 islands and islets just north of the equator. Situated about halfway between Hawaii and Australia, residents rely heavily on fishing. In fact, in 2011, the government actually reserved an area of nearly 2 million square kilometers as a shark sanctuary, establishing the largest one in the world. The country is especially friendly to Americans as the US dollar is the national currency. Now, interestingly, it was the site of the largest US nuclear weapons test in history, with fallout continuing to impact the nation. Though radioactivity isn't the nation's only worry, as it is considered the most endangered country in the world due to flooding and climate change. So if you're going to visit, you might want to do it soon. Up at number 6, we have Equatorial Guinea with 5,700 visitors. Divided into a mainland and 5 volcanic islands, the African nation of Equatorial Guinea is hugely unknown, mainly because of the political issues that have plagued the country for centuries. Despite the huge oil wealth, very little of the wealth has trickled down to the poverty-stricken people. However, Equatorial Guinea offers a rare opportunity to experience Spanish colonial history and beauty. Natural wonders are the biggest draw to the nation, with outstanding volcanic views, seaside sand stretches, and an unspoiled jungle environment. Animal lovers are in luck as the rainforest is home to numerous endangered primates, and the beaches host nesting sea turtles. All right, and halfway in our list today, we have South Sudan with 5,500 visitors. Having recently split from Sudan, South Sudan is one of the newest countries in the world. Because of a diverse population, including Muslims, Christians, and animists, and equally diverse geography, South Sudan has been afflicted by civil war for more than 40 years. Even with tumultuous politics and a potentially dangerous atmosphere, Sudanese hospitality remains second to none, and those who venture into this country often report it as one of their favorites. With a rich and ancient cultural history, South Sudan has delicious cuisine as well, including Turkish, Egyptian, and Ethiopian influences, as well as many interesting sites to visit. In 4th place, we have Kiribati with 4,000 visitors. Comprising of 33 islands, Kiribati is an extremely geographically isolated country with a total land area of 800 square kilometers spread over 3.5 million square kilometers of ocean. This is a prime destination for divers and bird watchers, especially on Christmas Island, as millions of birds head there each year. Interestingly, Kiribati is the only country in the world to fall into all 4 hemispheres, straddling the equator and extending into the eastern and western hemispheres. It was also the first country to see the dawn of the 3rd millennium on the 1st of January 2000. And in 3rd place, we have Tuvalu with 2,000 visitors. The tiny nation of Tuvalu is spread across 9 islands with a total area of just 26 square kilometers. The secluded islands lie north of Fiji, halfway between Hawaii and Australia. To get there, you'll have to catch a propeller plane from Fiji Airways that flies only twice a week. Featuring a vast diversity of marine life, Tuvalu is the ultimate diving and snorkeling vacation. There are 9 different coral atolls, numerous coral reefs, lagoons, and small islands to spend days or even weeks exploring. Once you're ready for the dry land experience, you can enjoy a distinct, friendly, and protected Polynesian culture with unique arts, crafts, music, dance, and stories. And at number 2, second place, we have Somalia with about 1,000 visitors. Numerous travel warnings are in effect for Somalia due to armed conflict. But before the civil wars began in the early 1990s, Somalia was extremely welcoming to tourists. The country is especially notable for its waterfalls, mountain ranges, and national parks. The wild areas are home to a vast number of interesting wildlife. This includes lions, cheetahs, spotted hyenas, leopards, onyx, and ostrich. Additionally, the country has the longest coastline of any of the African continent and possesses innumerable beaches. And in first place, the country with the least visitors is Nauru with less than 1,000 visitors. Plunked in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, this tiny island nation covers less than 21 square kilometers and is home to less than 10,000 inhabitants. Only one airline serves this country with an old Boeing 737, and tourist infrastructure like hotels and restaurants are very minimal. Freight deliveries are rare and employment is even scarcer. Healthcare is basic at best. In spite of its present economic gloom, the island still offers glimpses of its former glory, with turbulent surfs surrounding the coastline and seabirds swooping over the Green Island cliffs. For World War II buffs, there are also remnants of Japanese occupation scattered around the island. The enormous skeletal remains of mining infrastructure are also truly remarkable to see.
With that said, let's just jump right in. The country that we're starting off with at number 10 is Lebanon. Lebanon is a country in the northern Arabian Peninsula, and it's located at the crossroads of Asia and Europe, and it gave birth to early kingdoms and has been at the center of religious and political disturbances throughout history. Signs of civilization in Lebanon date back more than 7,000 years, and the land eventually came under the rule of the Roman Empire and then the Ottoman Empire. Following the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, Lebanon eventually gained independence in the year 1943. 68% of Lebanese people identify as Muslim, and 32% of those being Sunni Muslim and 31% of them being Shia Muslims, as well as other smaller Islamic branches make up a smaller percentage. You'll also find another 32% of the population being Christian. The country at number 9 is the country of Oman. It is the oldest independent state in the Arab world. Oman is located in the southeast corner of the Arabian Peninsula, and the country was always of interest to foreign powers due to its position for Indian Ocean trade. Controlled by the Portuguese in the 1500s and later the Persians, the country eventually formed close ties with Britain in the late 19th century, but never came under its power though, so never was a colony. Oman is a high-income country that earns 84% of its revenue from oil resources, and Oman is a Muslim country, but around 13% of the population is Hindu. Qatar is located on a small desert peninsula that extends northward into the Persian/Arab Gulf. It's Persian Gulf or Arab Gulf depending on who you ask, but either way, Qatar fell under the Islamic Caliphate after the rise of Islam in the year 628 AD, and was afterwards ruled by several different powers. Since the mid-1800s, the country has been ruled by the Al Thani family, and Qatar became an independent state in the year 1971. Now, it's a country that's rich in oil and natural gas. Qatar is one of the wealthiest countries in the entire world, and most citizens are Sunni Muslims, and almost the remaining rest of the citizens are Shia Muslims. Next up, let's look at Turkey. Turkey has been home to all three great Abrahamic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. 99% of Turkey's people today are Muslim. And the capital city, Istanbul, is also the historic location of Constantinople and still has active Orthodox churches. Roman Catholic churches are also there, as well as Protestant churches, and Turkey's Jewish community has some roots there too. Like, for example, St. Paul was born into a Jewish family in the Roman city of Tarsus on Turkey's eastern Mediterranean coasts. From there, we look at the next religious country by perception. We have Jordan. Jordan is a small country located on ancient biblical land, and the country is one of the most liberal in the region. Muslims make up 97.1% of the population, predominantly Sunni Muslims, and Christianity makes up 2.1%, and the majority of those are Greek Orthodox Christian. Jordan was under the rule of the Ottoman Empire until 1918, and later it was a mandate of the United Kingdom, and then Jordan became an independent kingdom in the year 1946. The country of Jordan lost the West Bank and East Jerusalem to Israel in the War of 1967. Years later, the country joined Egypt and became one of the two Arab nations to make a peace deal with Israel. Now, halfway in at number 5, we have Egypt. The vast majority of Egyptians, 90% to be exact, identify as Muslim, most of them being of the Sunni branch. 9% identify as Coptic Orthodox Christian, and the other remaining 1% identify with other denominations and religion. Egypt, of course, is one of the world's earliest and greatest civilizations. Its location at the northeast corner of Africa, bordering the Mediterranean Sea, has really made it a cultural and trading center. And Arab and Islamic traditions shape the country's culture, but also African, Mediterranean, and Western elements influence the country. Moving on to number 4, United Arab Emirates. According to the CIA fact book, 76% of the population of the country are Muslims. Christians are the largest minority community, making up 9% of the country's population. Followers of other religions make up the other 15% of the population, and Hindus and Buddhists have the highest following among other religions in the country. The country is made up of a federation of monarchies where the legal system is really a mix of civil as well as Islamic law. And the United Arab Emirates is very well known for its two largest cities, Dubai, of course, and Abu Dhabi. And these two cities bring in millions of tourists every single year. Up next, we have India, the birthplace of Hinduism and Buddhism. It's also the world's second most populous nation after China. For many years, India faced attacks from the north by the Turks, Arabs, Persians, and others. And by the 19th century, it was Great Britain that became the dominant power of the Indian subcontinent. India eventually gained its independence in the year 1947, and that is a very big day in history. While 94% of the world's Hindus live in India, there are also a large population of Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and Buddhists, as well as Jains, living in India. Number 2 is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a massive country. It's the giant of the Middle East, with the vast majority of the land and wealth of the Arabian Peninsula falling within its borders. Millions of devout Muslims from around the world participate in the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca each year, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It is the birthplace of the Muslim prophet Muhammad, and there's a strong religious identity that fills the country, with the majority religion being Sunni Islam. Islamic Sharia law governs all aspects of life. But surprisingly, Saudi Arabia, you'll find a lot of foreign workers living there from different countries who are non-Muslims. You'll find a lot of Christians, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, and even Sikhs. Now, topping this list at number 1 when it comes to religiosity by perception, we have the nation of Israel. Israel is the only Jewish nation in the world, and it's a small country on the eastern shore of the Mediterranean Sea. It is a land that has historic biblical roots, and it's often referred to as the Holy Land. For its relatively small size, the country has really played a massive role in global affairs. The country has a strong economy, it has significant landmarks, and it's a place that is actually recognized by several religions. Well, at least the landmarks within the country. But because the land is disputed, they have run into a lot of trouble and disputes with their Arab neighbors. Either way though, 81% of Israelis are Jewish, while the remainder are mostly ethnically Arab and religiously Muslim, which is about 14%, and Christianity makes up 2%, as well as Druze makes up 2%. Let's jump in. At number 10, we have the United Kingdom. With a total population of around 68 million and 3.2 trillion GDP in terms of PPP, purchasing power parity, the United Kingdom would drop from 9th to the 10th place as Germany overtook the country. At the same time, the UK will knock France out of the top 10 countries, making it one of the few developed economies to survive the test of time. This is the prediction that is being made for the United Kingdom when it comes to being a dominant power in the world. Now, moving on to number 9, Germany. Over the next 30 years, Germany will perform slightly better than the United Kingdom, and according to PwC analysts, Germany will be impacted by factors other than economic fundamentals. Instead, Germany's performance relative to certain emerging markets will play a significant role in its ranking among the top 10 powerful countries that could potentially run the world. In at the number 8 spot, we have Japan. Japan is in a similar position to Germany in that the strength of its economy is expected to decline a bit, but other countries such as Brazil and Mexico are expected to accelerate by the year 2050. Overall though, when it comes to Japan specifically, Japan is the world's 3rd largest economy today, and it's expected to drop out of the top 5 countries likely to rule the world by the year 2050, falling to the 8th spot, and that's why it's at number 8 in this episode. Moving on to the country at number 7, Mexico. Many people would be surprised to learn that Mexico's economy ranks alongside the United Kingdom as well as Italy. According to the International Monetary Fund, Mexico has the world's 11th highest GDP in terms of purchasing power parity. While it is true that organized crime exists in Mexico and that many Mexicans want to immigrate to the United States, an approximately equal number of Mexicans are actually leaving the United States and returning to Mexico. And they're doing this because they're drawn to the economic opportunities in their home country of Mexico. Mexico has the largest auto plant in the Western Hemisphere, and Bombardier manufactures aircraft components there as well. So there's a whole lot of opportunity in Mexico, and that's why it's at number 7. Now, moving on to number 6, Russia. Russia should definitely not be underestimated. It has nearly twice the land area of the United States, as well as it's a bigger country than Canada. The two countries of Russia and the United States control more than 90% of the world's nuclear arsenal. Russia's military forces are larger than those of France, Germany, Italy, and Japan combined. Experts believe that as the world transitions to natural gas, Russia has positioned itself well in comparison to other economies. Furthermore, as seen in recent years, Russia has been gradually diversifying its economy to avoid relying solely on natural resources for its growth. Coming in at number 5, let's talk about Brazil. Brazil has an estimated GDP based on its purchasing power parity of around $3.7 trillion. And it has an annual average growth rate of 2.5%. So we can see why Brazil is number 5. It's definitely a big contender of one of the countries that could definitely rule the world. Brazil was named a market that overcame challenges and ultimately succeeded in combining global best practices with flexible adaptation to local business and consumer environments. The failure to combat political scandals as well as rampant corruption could definitely be a setback. Nonetheless, a more diverse economy as well as an increased foreign investment may allow Brazil to overtake some of the world's largest economies today. The country coming in at number 4 is Indonesia. The GDP PPP of Indonesia is expected to climb to around 10.5 trillion by the year 2050. While it has significant material hard power, Indonesia has some characteristics that set it apart from the rest. Despite economic and political challenges, Indonesia has demonstrated its growing global influence. Even before the pandemic struck China, many companies were actually leaving China in search of greener pastures in neighboring countries. And because of this, well, it had some good results for Indonesia. Indonesia attracted more offshore jobs from China. And even before that, Indonesia caught the attention of financial analysts worldwide. Coming in at number 3 spot, let's take a look at United States, or should I say America. Americans are broadly optimistic about the country's future over the next 30 years, but more pessimistic when it comes to specific issues such as the country's place in the world, the cost of healthcare, as well as the strength of the United States economy. Overall though, 6 out of 10 adults believe that the United States will be less important in the world by the year 2050. According to PwC researchers, mass education could play a significant role in America's decline. Now, even though the United States ranks near the top of the OECD in terms of public education spending, the results have been under par. And if the United States and other countries improve education by embracing technological change, new job opportunities could emerge. However, it may not be enough to overcome the world's 2 richest economies, India and China. Either way, United States is still a very powerful contender for nations that could run the world. Moving on to number 2, India. India has an estimated future GDP PPP of 44.1 trillion, which is a big increase from its current 11.665 trillion GDP. It is a sign of the times that even Kellogg's has established itself as one of India's largest foreign brands. Although projections show that it will outperform every other economy except China, figures show that the average income will be lower than in other countries. According to the report, India's GDP trajectory over the next 30 plus years is completely different from its overall GDP progression. And this shows that while strong population growth can be a key driver of GDP growth, it can also make raising average income levels a lot more difficult. However, while the global economy is expected to slow over time, India will definitely be an exception, with growth remaining higher for longer. Coming in at the number 1 spot, China. It is expected that China will be the most powerful country in the world by the year 2050. From the World Bank to the United Nations to Goldman Sachs to the European Union, many organizations, financial institutions, and governments have predicted this for some time. China definitely won't grow by remaining as isolated as it has been for many years. Instead, China will expand by opening its markets to foreign companies such as General Motors and even Tesla. Since engaging in a trade war with the United States back in the year 2017, China has embraced market-oriented reforms, allowing for greater foreign direct investment. Ultimately, despite geopolitical tensions and trade disputes, it's strongly believed that China will definitely be the dominant country.